I started my when I started my advocacy at 16 years of age, my mantra was, a nation's greatest wealth is its health. And as I come to you today, that still stands. So as a young citizen of a small island developing state, we are witnessing an increase in climate-sensitive diseases, such as vector-borne, food and waterborne diseases like malaria and dengue. It saddens me to say that the effects of climate change, including an increase in temperature, more frequent and severe extreme weather events, and increasing sea levels that us as small island developing states are experiencing will certainly exacerbate this burden of disease for our young people, which threatens our access to safe food, supplies, clean water, and sanitation. Only a couple days ago, I attended the Youth for Climate event that was held in Milan, Italy, and our young people called on ministers to ensure universal climate education and providing sustainable funding for climate education, while at the same time integrating climate change into our schools' curriculum and mainstreaming climate education into climate change policies. We as young people believe that COP26 presents a unique opportunity for ministers to pledge to support climate education. We are no longer prepared to wait on ministerial policy, but rather we as young people are implementing our own climate education projects because we understand the importance of everyone taking action for climate change. We need to keep dreaming big and holding our governments accountable for the decisions that they're making. We are tired of holding on to hope because hope is a good breakfast, but a very late supper, hoping that we see changes, but we are demanding that these changes are made today. Climate change and health also poses a very serious social imbalance to our population. And if we do not take seriously the necessary actions to mitigate against the impact of climate change on our health, how we as young people can continue to trust our leaders with our futures to build a more resilient nation? How can our children inherit an earth that is sustainable and environmentally friendly? How can our young people remain committed to taking critical actions for our future? How many more of our children and their families must be displaced as a result of climate change and its impact? How can us as a nation achieve our attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals? Rather, how can we move from inequality and vulnerability to a future for prosperity for all? We are seeing an increase in mortality, and this is a driver of health inequities. I believe health can play a significant part in the solution. So we need to strengthen the climate resilience and sustainability of our health systems, which are a main line of defense in protecting populations from emerging threats such as climate change. And the time is now that our governments need to increase their commitment to a safer and more sustainable and inclusive future for all. So I am making a clarion call to action that young people in the Caribbean join and start their own climate organizations like the Hey Campaign and seek to spread that awareness to our peers to learn about climate change and its health implications. So friends, let us recommit ourselves to ensuring a safe, secure, and prosperous future for us and future generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashley, for your very powerful address. Before we get to our other speakers, we have some questions for our audience, and we will use the poll functions for this. Let me preface these questions by saying that this session is, as you know, on informing and empowering youth to address the effects on climate change on health. And schools could, of course, be an important factor in achieving this objective. The first question we have is therefore whether you think that climate and health education should be part of the secondary school curriculum. We'll give you a minute to answer this question and then we'll have a look at the results.
Is that question for me, Kirsten?
It's for everyone.
Okay.
So you can click any option on the poll question, but it's for the general audience. And it particularly addresses the students, but of course, everyone is welcome to answer this question. So we get the results here, and we have 74% who say absolutely, and I think it was 26% who said yes, and we had nobody who said maybe or no. So of course, our audience here may not be representative of the whole world, because anyone, I assume, who attends this conference has a strong interest in advocating for better education on climate change, but still all of our attendees are in favor of including climate and health education in the secondary school curriculum, which I think is a very strong statement. Maybe we can move to the second question, which addresses mainly the teachers, but again, everybody is welcome to answer this question. And this question is, how easy, can we get the second question? This is the first question still. Perfect. Oh, still the first question. Let me already read the second question so you know what you're going to answer. The second question is, how easy or difficult would you find it? Sorry, it's still the first question. How easy or difficult would you find it to incorporate climate and health education in your classes without it being in the official curriculum? And now we got the right question on here and the respective answers. Now we get the results, and we have a very mixed picture here. We have about 7% who say they would find it very difficult, about 10% who say difficult, 14% have never thought about it, and 52% would think it's manageable, and 17% would think that it's easy. I think it's quite encouraging that at least more than half of the attendees think that it's manageable to incorporate climate and health education in classes without it being in the official curriculum. But evidently there's more work to be done to both make it easier for teachers to include climate and health education without it being in the official curriculum, but also to actually take steps to include it in the official curriculum so that this difficulty doesn't even arise. So maybe we can move on to the next question in that case. And the question is, how long do you think it will take to formally include climate and health education in the regional curriculum? And then we have a couple of choices, 1 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, more than 5 years, or I don't think it will ever happen. Maybe we can get the results. Brilliant, thank you. So we have 24% thinking it would take about 1 to 2 years, 38% thinking it would take 2 to 5 years, then 35% thinking it would take more than 5 years, and 3% who think that this will never happen, which is quite sad actually, really, that we are currently at a point where some people don't even have hopes of this ever happening. But it is encouraging that most of you think that it will happen. And I'm sure that our speakers will elaborate a bit more on these questions during their statements. And of course, there will also be room to discuss this more in the breakout rooms. Let me now introduce our speakers. We have one speaker from the student side, one speaker from the teacher side, and one speaker from the policy side. From the student side, I warmly welcome Dominique Nurse-Allen. Dominique is a final year student at Trinity College, Maraval. She grew up in Barbados and later moved to Trinidad. Dominique is an avid open water swimmer and has represented Trinidad and Tobago on the national swim team on multiple occasions. Dominique is also a volunteer at Earth Medic and has done great work in supporting our team with social media work. From the teacher side, I'm very pleased to welcome Mario Martin. Mario, thank you very much for making it today. Mario is the appointed dean at St. George's College, Barataria in Trinidad. He has 18 years of teaching experience in the subjects of biology and environmental science, and he has been a marker for CXC for 16 years. Mario is also a member of both the biology teachers and environmental teachers group of Trinidad and Tobago. Finally, from the policy side, I'm happy to introduce Natasha Sood. Natasha is a first-year medical student at Penn State College of Medicine. She holds an MPH in environmental health science with a specialization in climate change and health from Columbia University. And she is the founding leader and current executive chair of Medical Students for a Sustainable Future. This year, she is completing a research fellowship at the Global Consortium for Climate and Health Education. I look very much forward to hearing from all of you. And Dominique, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. I would like to say hello and welcome to everyone, whether it be policymakers, students, specially invited guests, or all of our other many participants. I'm elated and honored to speak to you today as a student living in the Caribbean and also as a nature lover. It has been my pleasure to work alongside Earth Medic on social media and outreach in order to educate, excite, and encourage change. As will be apparent in my bio, I'm especially passionate about the ocean and the impact of climate change on our marine and coastal environments. These environments are critical to our Caribbean well-being as largely coastal dwelling people. It pains me to reflect on how fisherfolk, water sports operators, and tourism enterprises will be increasingly affected by climate change, reducing further the employment prospects of youth and their ability to carry forward cultural traditions associated with the ocean. Furthermore, the beauty of coral reefs and ocean wildlife surrounding small island developing states is unparalleled. It breaks my heart and angers me that coral reefs are under threat of extinction because of the previous generation's relentless exploitation of the environment. More broadly, the state of the ocean has drastic effects on our health through sea level rise, coastal erosion, salinization, and contamination of water supply, plastic and chemical pollution, and ocean acidification, toxic algal blooms, sargassum, seaweed growth, and hurricanes. I believe that the state of the ocean and coastlines is one of the most critical issues affecting our health as Caribbean people. And I expect to follow a career path that allows me to contribute to the mitigation and adaptation of these problems. Oceanic climate change issues should be integrated into every aspect of our public education in the Caribbean, in schools and to adults. Additionally, the Youth for Climate Driving Ambition Conference was held recently by the United Nations, which included a host of young people from all over the world, including Greta Thunberg, and as Ashley said earlier, she attended. However, it was very evident that there was a lack of representation of youth from SIDS. Why is this the case? When we as people of SIDS feel the most harsh effects of climate change and subsequent health hazards. Why are we, the youth of the Caribbean, not at the forefront of the fight against climate change? I believe that a direct link can be highlighted between the aforementioned issues and the lack of integration of the grave effects of climate change into our curriculum in the Caribbean. I call for the integration of climate change and health into school curricula, along with the education and campaigns for adults with a focus on challenges caused by the severe impacts of ocean environments in small island developing states. Finally, I thank you for your attention and I'm grateful for this opportunity to express my concerns.
Thank you very much, Dominique. Without further ado, I'll hand straight over to Mario. Mario, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, all protocols being established already. An inconvenient truth. 6 degrees could change the world. Ice Age, the meltdown. Happy Feet, the day after tomorrow. And a plethora of other titles and subtitles one can add. However, the commonality or guiding principle about all these is that they are prophetic about the phenomenon known as climate change, and by extension, they showcase the imminent danger that we will, are, and will be in if mitigating factors are not instituted at a faster rate. Climate change and the impact on health touches me as an educator deeply, having spent the last 18 years in the classroom and also in my capacity as a dean of discipline at my institution. I have taught the curriculum for Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Exam, Units 1 and 2 for Biology and Environmental Science. And each year, as I groom and prepare my cohort of students for their academic success, they are all enthusiastic and become certified in their endowment of tertiary level education. However, as I reflect on their professional development, I also remember the days of when I thought a utopia existed in this world. Over the years, I have learned simply not to relay syllabus objectives, but to foster critical thinking, analysis, problem solving, and for the students as many parties, the topic of climate change and health, in particular, the different perspectives that are engaged in such a process. We have to understand climate change is not about us only. It is seen from different perspectives. We have to consider the economic element, political factors, religious and ethical values, and the biological or environmental concern it normally plagues, which we see daily in our lives. However, in any plan moving forward, we must involve formidable contingencies. We must also be able to identify the key factors and actors in such a play, and we must always be ready to grab and go at a notice. Often, I have heard many of my past students repeat, "Sir, Mr. Martin, it is difficult to effect change outside here. People have their own agendas. Who is really listening to us?" Instead of embracing the notion, I always reassure them and always make reference to National Geographic's 6 degrees. Regardless of how minuscule each degree is, the cascade of effects similar to the change that they are doing in the various sectors will always make a major difference. From bureaucratic changes in the syllabus content and review, to streamlining the CAPE syllabus, to providing foundation courses at the University of the West Indies and other institutions, there are challenges. Whether delays in changing the syllabus content, lack of data, case studies, relating, and also networking, we as teachers and students have faced it all. However, it is my hope that this conference of climate change and health targets the rising generation at all levels, and in terms of increased awareness as the changes are seen evidently. For example, increased vector and waterborne diseases, increased frequency and intensity of tropical cyclones. We are quite familiar with the effects of Hurricane Irma Hurricane Maria, and many others that made landfall, causing massive devastation and loss of life in the last 10 years. We have also seen coastal erosion along many coasts. In Trinidad, we have rapid coastal erosion taking place along the coast: Manzanilla, Mayaro, Icacos, Cedros. These are just a few of the areas affected mainly by rising sea levels and coastal damage. We are also very, very aware of our food importation bill. For a tiny country of just 1.4 million people, our food import bill is around $4.9 billion per annum. This actually threatens our food security. With increasing climate change, this would also affect in terms of our daily living. It may affect our tourism. It may also lead to where, for example, we may become climate migrants or refugees due to rising sea level or environmental degradation beyond habitation. Pandemic or not, the hands on the climate change analog clock have not stopped, but have been nearly eclipsed by other issues which have taken center stage. Unfortunately, in the pandemic, we have grown weary of the second, third, and fourth waves. However, the wave or waves plural that may engulf small insular Caribbean states could be quite catastrophic. With this, I thank you and good evening.
Thank you very much, Mario. Let me hand you over to our next speaker, namely Natasha Sood. Natasha, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Natasha Sood, and I'm a fourth-year medical student and one of the founding leaders and current chair for Medical Students for a Sustainable Future. We are a group of over 517 medical students across 110 medical schools around the world who are deeply concerned with the impact of climate change on our patients' health, our health system, and our role as providers. In 2019, a small group of us came together and shared experiences of how we were all trying to mobilize students and faculty at our respective institutions to incorporate climate change into our curricula. And we did this because we realized that the climate crisis is a health crisis and one we would have to respond to as providers for the rest of our careers. We wanted and we needed to be trained effectively, but we found that it was daunting for us as individuals to take those steps alone. So we created a community of medical students united to take action on climate for both our patients and our future providers. The exponential growth of our community reflects a deep understanding that climate change is a critical obstacle to the health of our patients and our health system. And our efforts at MS4SF have converged on increasing climate change and planetary health competencies in medical curricula especially. And as we have seen over the past 2 years in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, in disaster settings, the health system and providers are on the front lines of emergency response, both during and after the disaster. So it is critical that the rising generation of health professionals and students all over the world are prepared to respond to these crises. And for health professional students, they are prepared to treat patients within our changing climate and our increasingly overburdened health system. Principles of climate change must be included in education. And we believe that health professional students are uniquely poised to catalyze action on education to include climate change. As health professional students, as medical students, we have the credibility that comes with our role as medical students, but we also have that student lens that connects us to youth activism, which is why we are all here tonight. Thank you so much, and looking forward to the next session.
Thank you very much, Natasha. And indeed, thank you very much to all three of you, Dominique, Mario, and Natasha, for your very insightful statements. I'm sure that we will get to discuss some of the points you mentioned in more detail during the breakout rooms, which are the next point on our agenda. We will have 2 parallel breakout rooms, and you can choose which one you would like to attend. Our first breakout room is on learning and teaching about climate and health and aims to provide a forum for students and teachers to exchange their views on climate and health education. This breakout room will be kindly led by Mario Martin, who you already heard from just a few minutes ago. The second breakout room will discuss how to integrate climate and health in an official curriculum and will provide insights into policymaking. This breakout room will be led by Becca Philipsborn. Becca is a general pediatrician at Emory University School of Medicine and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Her scholarly work focuses on climate change and global child health and includes efforts to integrate climate change into the medical education curriculum. So she is best placed to lead this breakout room, really. Becca will be joined by Natasha Sood, who you also already heard from, by Madhu Manivanan, and by Gridia Huerta Montanes, who will introduce themselves during the breakout room sessions. And I'm sure Becca will also, again, introduce herself in a little bit more detail. And after the breakout room sessions, we will meet again in the main session, and we will have a joint discussion, and we will have some reports from the breakout rooms. And then we will have some Q&A as well. So the aim is to have an interactive breakout room session and then to have a discussion with everyone in the main session after the two breakout rooms. And I think our conference team will now assist us in setting up the two breakout rooms, and you will be able to choose one of the two breakout rooms. And I should mention that the breakout rooms will take roughly half an hour. So we will reconvene with everyone in the main session at about 6:45, is it 7 in your time? So we will have about half an hour. 7:45, I'm afraid. Sorry, I'm in a different time zone, but we will have half an hour for the breakout rooms.
If anybody needs assistance joining a breakout room, you can just send a message to the host and we can send you to whichever one you prefer. Just let us know which one you want to go to.
If you're having trouble finding the breakout rooms, you can click the breakout rooms button at the bottom of your screen and self-select. Otherwise, we can assign you if you put where you'd like to go in the chat.
We will give everyone a couple of seconds really to join us back from the breakout rooms. I hope we have everyone back now. Welcome back, everyone. I had a look in both of the breakout rooms, and all I can say is that people had very lively discussions in breakout room 1, and there were some very interesting presentations in breakout room 2. And also there was some really impressive timing there in breakout room 2, I have to say. Half an hour was of course short, and both topics could have been discussed for much longer. But maybe we can have one person from each breakout room to report on the main points, and then we can have an open discussion and also an integrated Q&A session. Maybe from the first breakout room, Mario, would you like to give us maybe a 1 minute summary of what you discussed in the first breakout room?
Sure. Thank you very much, and good evening to all once more. Basically, our group looked at the use of greater advocacy and student as well as teacher integration in tackling this climate change and effect on health. It was a difficult one where we knew that some of the limitations we would have experienced from that point of view. Platforms we considered where you can actually increase that level of advocacy. Social media platforms, the use of the WhatsApp, the Instagram, Facebook, looking at your target audience, all right? We do have the target audience, not to neglect the people who are still in tune with the traditional forms of mass media, right? The newspaper, etc. We compared it to COVID, where getting that information out, you have to actually reach all your target audiences. We also had contributions by several people or younger generation, where they spoke about the use of sports. All right, sports is something that is part of our Caribbean identity, just like many other countries in the world, and sports could be used to getting that idea out. We also looked at the use of entertainment in terms of cross-curricular subject areas, the teaching of climate change, not only in environmental science or biology, etc., but in studies like social studies, economics, physical education. We also looked at several ways of reducing carbon footprints, the use of certain paraphernalia and merchandise, getting bigger brands and entertain sports personalities involved. There's also a disconnect also too from the way how things are advocated sometimes in society. And one of the options moving forward, where we have student councils, the GIL, right? Rather than it just being, a one-man protest, or you have just different fractions of society where there is that lack of communication taking place. Hopefully this will send a message to the policymakers also too. We could also look at the incentives, giving incentives for citizens of the country, whether it be monetary compensation for switching to various environmentally sustainable practices and reduction of carbon footprint. And last but not least, okay, the use of culture, right? The use of the arts, spoken word, dance, all of these can be used in terms of bringing across that message rather than the traditional means, which is just existent in the school system. And we'll start, it must be a multi-pronged approach from early infants, okay, or what we call preschool, and it goes right up to postgraduate level. Okay, so that was the contribution from our group this evening. Back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mario. That was a great summary, and it's quite impressive how much you managed to discuss in the space of half an hour. Maybe I can invite Becca to give us a summary of the second breakout room. That would be fantastic.
Thank you so much. I'll do my best in this time that we have. We had the pleasure of hearing from 2 medical students and a fellow faculty member who shared their experiences in incorporating climate and health into the curriculum. and especially the power of student voices in catalyzing climate into the curriculum and climate action more broadly speaking. Med Students for a Sustainable Future was featured and has over 500 members now working to get this climate content into the health curriculum. We heard that climate and health education goes hand in hand with health equity and environmental justice. In addition to that environmental justice and advocacy lens, we saw how the students and faculty are incorporating this not just into the classroom, but also into healthcare settings where we need a transformation in the way that we practice medicine and deliver healthcare as well to be more climate resilient. We also heard how there's an environmental research component that resonates at schools, and that environmental research is what informs policy. And we need people to engage to have better policy around environmental health for our communities. I want to say from the healthcare side too, something that resonated was actually from my colleague Mario Martin here that I think is really important for us to remember as we try and do this quickly and accelerate action. Pandemic or not, the hands on the climate analog clock have not stopped. I want to thank you for that comment. I think we really have to keep that in mind. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Becca. So that also was very interesting. And I think also in the space of half an hour, you had some really interesting presentations there. To the general audience, to everyone, you are very welcome to, now is your time to put questions to any one of our speakers into the chat box, and we will then attempt to answer them. Maybe in the meanwhile, while you're thinking up some questions, I would have a question, or we can go back to one of the questions that we posed as a poll question earlier on, maybe to Becca and Mario, because both of you have some experience in this regard. Mario, you have been involved with CXC, and Rebecca, you obviously have a lot of experience in the policy context and are advocating for including climate and health education, or climate education in particular, in the official medical curriculum. So we had one question that asked, how long do you think it will take to formally include climate and health education in an official curriculum? And this can be either medical curriculum in Becca's case or a school curriculum, secondary school curriculum in Mario's case. Maybe you can just both give a couple of remarks on what you think. Will it be, is it possible, and how long would it take? And what does it take? Mario, would you like to start?
Sure, no problem. Thank you very much for that question. In terms of policy changes for curriculum, at the secondary school level, I'll let you know it is not the easiest because CXC, it's a regional exam, right, or body, I should say. Normally, there have to be several workshops that take place. They have to have policy changes, they must have meetings that take place. And what the CXC body tries to do is that they try to traverse what happens at the Form 5 level, or what's called CSEC, Caribbean Secondary Examinations Council, and what happens at the tertiary level. So what is going to take place is that they try to streamline the curriculum or the syllabus to actually meet the needs of what is required at the university. However, the main university that they would try to look at it would be based on the University of the West Indies, all right? However, it does not always offer that flexibility for what students may want to pursue in foreign-based universities, or let's say internationally. So there is some disconnect to a point in terms of bringing about those changes. And it is a lengthy process. Sometimes the syllabus changes every 5 to 7 years. So sometimes if something like this, it is currently on the syllabus, climate change, etc. But in terms of any advancement further and to refine, to fine tune those objectives, it may take a longer time, probably next 3 or 4 years that may take place. Okay, so that's from secondary school level generally.
Great, thanks, Mario. Rebecca?
Sure, I think getting it into the curriculum can take a minute, but if you are a teacher and you have a health profession student with you in clinic, even just one, you can start tomorrow. The students were able to get this into the formal curriculum a lot more quickly than I would have been. And I think that partnership between students and faculty is really important. So students were able to lobby the school at Emory to get one lecture into the curriculum really quickly. Now, to get the full curriculum or curricular thread that we're working on did take a little longer. It took hopping through the steps of the various curriculum committees. And from the time that we started until we had this for full first year of disseminated content was about 3 years. But we've learned from that. I think we have some knowledge now to help support others in developing content. And now that schools are doing this, other schools are more likely to do it as well. So you can start tomorrow. If you want to have something more official at the school level, that's possible too. And it does not take as long as you may think. That doesn't happen if you don't start.
Great, thank you. We had one very interesting question here in the chat. Caroline asks, are there plans for Emory or MS4SF to develop a guidebook for medical students to advocate for climate change and health curriculum, and maybe in the future have it adapted for public health schools, nursing schools and other relevant programs? And Natasha very kindly already gave some answers here in the chat, but maybe Becca or Natasha, would you like to elaborate a little bit further on this?
I would love to hear Natasha's take on this.
Absolutely. I think it's really important that we discuss these changes across disciplines in healthcare. So MS4SF does have that guide out on to help students address this in medical curricula. But the Global Consortium on Climate and Health is really addressing this from a more interdisciplinary standpoint. And I also dropped that link in the chat. I would also recommend those interested to look into the Planetary Health Report Card, which I will also put the link in the chat in just a minute. But this is a student-driven metric-based report card founded and co-directed by Carly Hampshire, a medical student at University California, San Francisco. Thank you, Dr. Phillips-Born. And they've created this metric-based system to assess institutions' commitment to research, education, sustainability, and community outreach. While this was initially developed for medical students, medical institutions, they are expanding to other disciplines. And so I think it would be worthwhile to undergo that assessment as well.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. Thanks. And thanks also for sharing the resources in the chat. That's very helpful, especially also, I think, for our participants to follow up on what we've been discussing in the session. It's always good to get these additional resources. So that's great. Unfortunately, we are now coming to the end of our session already. We had some very interesting discussions, and it seems that all of us are aware of the important and big role that the youth can play in advocating for climate and health education. I hope that you enjoyed this event and that your discussions will continue after the conference. Don't hesitate, of course, to reach out to us at Earthmedic and also to our other speakers and to exchange details amongst each other. After all, conferences are also networking events, and we need strong connections to make our climate and health goals happen. I very much thank all of our speakers, and I would like to very warmly thank our conference coordinator, Chantal Lane, who has done a lot of great work on this conference behind the scenes. Finally, thank you to all of our organizers, partners, and sponsors, in particular also the Earthmedic and Earth Nurse Foundation and its founder, Dr. James Hospitalis, who is joining us in this session on his birthday today. We also thank the Yale School of Public Health and Professor Robert Dubrow, who has been championing this conference, as well as the Pan American Health Organization and CARICOM for their support. Have a lovely evening, everyone, or if you are like me in Europe, good night.